Hey guys, are we ready for 15.3a geometric sequences? So we have a new formula today. Okay, this is to find the nth term of a geometric. So this is just like having the equation for the arithmetic. Okay, so a sub n is our nth term, a sub 1 is our first term, r, common ratio, and then n is our term number. So the thing that we have to be very careful of here is order of operations. So when you are evaluating this, we want to make sure that we do our exponents first. So we want to do our r to the n minus 1 before multiplying by our first term. So let's jump right in. So find the sixth term if our first term is -3 and our common ratio is -2. So that means that we are looking for a sub 6. I like to use parentheses when I'm doing geometric. Okay, remembering that our a sub n and our n should always match. Once you have this set up, you can plug it into your calculator exactly as it appears, and we'll find that our sixth term is 96. Okay, very, very simple. We're just plugging it into the calculator. All right, so pause your video. Up right away, we have 2 your turn problems. Make sure that we get those 2 final answers before moving on. Okay, moving in now, we want to look at writing equations. So I think that you're going to enjoy writing equations for geometric sequences much more than arithmetic, because once we figure out the necessary information, all we have to do is set up the equation. There's nothing for us to simplify here because of that order of operations that I was just talking about. So without an exponent, there's not really anything more for us to do. Okay, so we're always using this formula. Okay, we don't have anything else for geometric at this time. And whenever we write an equation, remember, we want to do for any term for the nth term. So we want to make sure that we're leaving a sub n and our n as variables. So the only things that we need are our first term and our common ratio. So I can very easily pick out that first term just by reading this sequence. And then I'm going to determine what my common ratio is by dividing. So 2 divided by 0.5 gets me a common ratio of 4. Okay, and like I said, you're really going to enjoy it. This is our equation. There is nothing more that we have to do for that. Now, they can't all be quite that easy. Okay, so still writing an equation, but now the problem is starting us off with an a sub 4. Well, a sub 4 is not what I need in my equation. What do we need? Here's our equation. We need an a sub 1 and we need a common ratio. Well, cool, they gave me a common ratio, but I don't know what my a sub 1 is. So before I can write my equation, step 1, I have to solve for my first term. Remember to always use parentheses here. Okay, so I'm using that 25. That's my a sub n, and n is my 4. Okay, so I can solve this. Okay, we're really doing -5 to the 3rd power. Make sure you use parentheses. And that tells me that a sub 1 is -0.2. Now, you can use a decimal if it is terminating. Okay, but anytime that it is repeating or it's like really very long, you want to use a fraction. Okay, so now that I have my first term, step 2, I can write my equation. All I have to do is plug in that first term and plug in my common ratio. Okay, and ta-da, there is our equation. Just make this look a little bit more like a 0. Okay, nothing to simplify on these. Okay, so you have 2 your turns, 1 of each kind. Your final answers are written there. Now remember, number 2 is going to be a 2-step problem before you can write your equation. So pause your video and work each one of those out. Okay, moving on now to a different type of problem. So we want to find a specific term. We want to find a sub 15, but they're giving me the 4th term. Well, what variables, what terms are used in the formula? We always come back to this same formula. A sub 1 is used, not a sub 4. Think to yourself, what do I need to find in order to get that 15th term? Pause the video, write down an answer. You need the first term. You need a sub 1. So before we can do anything else, we have to find our first term. So when in doubt, always try and find a sub 1. See if you have enough information. So let's look at the information that we have here. Plugging in what I know, it only leaves me with one variable, so I could solve for this. I can get my first term. Now that I have that, I'm going to use it to write my equation. Nope, not writing an equation. I'm solving. Okay? I am solving for the 15th term. Okay, so we're going to plug that into our calculators exactly as it appears. Okay, make sure that you're using parentheses. Okay, now this is a very ugly decimal, and unfortunately for us, this does not turn into a fraction. So we're going to write down the entire decimal answer for our final answer of a sub 15. Okay, so again, it says find the indicated term. Well, I'm reading what it's giving me, and I don't see what is my indicated term. The indicated term means a sub n, but I don't see that anywhere. But I do see that I have an n. And we know that a sub n always has to match our n. So I can assume that we are trying to find a sub 3. Now, in order to do that, we need our first term because they're starting me with the 7th. So let's use that information first, keeping n equals 3 off to the side for just a minute. And I find out that my first term is 1. Well, I can use that to now solve for a sub 3. I get a sub 3 equals 36. Remember, no matter how small the n is, you always want to use the formula. You always want to make sure that you're plugging it in to solve. Okay, so you have 2 your turns for these types of questions. Okay, your final answers are there on the bottom. Make sure that you're getting those. Okay, and the very last thing that we want to look at here is geometric means. So if you remember from arithmetic lesson, the means indicate that something is missing. So this says find the 3 geometric means between 2 and 1,250. Okay, I want you to pause the video and see what information you can write down just from what I've written here. 2 blank 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 1250. What information is that telling you? Okay, that's telling me a sub 5 is 1,250. A sub 1 is 2, and there are 5 terms. The only thing I do not know is the common ratio of how I got from 2 to those 3 missing terms and then ended up at 1,250. So the R is the thing that I'm going to need to solve for. That's all that is missing from our geometric formula. So let's plug in what we have. All right, we really got to pay attention to our order of operations here. So we have to get rid of the 2 that is multiplying first. Okay, now we remember if it's r to the 4th, we know we have to take that 4th root. Okay, I hope we remember how to put that in our calculator. Okay, we take the 4th root, and r is going to equal plus or minus 5. Now your calculator is not going to tell you that it's plus or minus, so you're going to have to remember that. So anytime that we take a root where it's even, okay, we're talking about the 4 on the outside, that is an even number, your answer is going to have a plus or minus. So that means that there are 2 options for our common ratio, and we're going to have to solve for both of them. So there are 2 sets of missing terms here. So we're going to find the missing terms when r equals 5, and then we're going to find the missing terms when r equals negative 5. So applying our 5, starting with our first term of 2, we get 10, 50, 250, and that correctly leaves us at 1,250. So when r equals positive 5, those are our 3 missing geometric means. When r equals negative 5, we're going to start at 2 again, and this time multiply each term with a negative 5. Now see, it still lands us on a positive 1,250. Okay, we just have a different set of terms on the inside in between the first and the last. Okay, so the thing to remember here, when you take an even root, your answer must be plus or minus, giving you 2 options for r, and the calculator is not going to tell you that it is a plus or a minus. Let's do one more of these together, and then you'll have a few your turns. Okay, so this says find the 4 geometric means in between these numbers. Okay, again, I want you to pause the video and see if you can write out what information is given by what I've put down here with the 2 numbers and the spaces. Okay, were you able to come up with a sub 1 is negative 2, a sub 6 is negative 64, and that n equals 6? So we're going to plug in what we know, and that leaves us with we don't know our common ratio. Okay, again, paying attention to our order of operations, we're going to divide out that -2 first. And we get 32 equals r to the 5th. So if it's r to the 5th, we're going to take the 5th root. Okay, now the 5th root is an odd number. So that means that our answer does not require a plus or minus. So our common ratio here only has one option, a +2. So we're going to use that to apply to our sequence. Okay, we make sure we started at -2 and we ended at -64. And those are the missing terms in between. Okay, as promised, here are your 2 your turns. Okay, make sure that you're getting those correct answers before you move on. That's our last example for this video. If you have any questions, be sure and ask now before